Well, first of all, I want to welcome everybody to Meet the Candidates Night. There are people who are online. There are also people in the audience here, a couple. And this will be not only streamed right now on YouTube, but it will be recorded as well and available later. We're going to be meeting the candidates, the two candidates for Select Board a little bit later, just in a few minutes. I'll introduce myself. My name's Bruce Burgoyne, and my job is to facilitate the questions and kind of pace us to cover as much as possible. And I'll try to prioritize citizen questions that come either online or from the audience first, because that's really why we're here. Although we did have some prepared questions ahead of time that we sent out to you, and I kind of call those the priming the pump. But I will also probably try to take a look at them as we go along and throw a couple in, particularly if they address something that we just didn't get around to. Candidates will have 3 minutes to answer, to make an opening statement, a closing statement, and the time for answering a question would be 2 to 3 minutes. I do have a timer. I have like a little warning card. I'm very unlikely to use those if we, yeah.
Throw a card.
Throw the card. I'm very unlikely to use those if we have a decent pace. And so if somebody's going 2.5 minutes, that's not a big deal to me. But I'll make sure everybody has a fair amount of time. We'll try to avoid cutoffs, obviously, and so that's why I have the yellow card, is to just kind of give a caution that please wrap it up in the next half a minute or so. I'll rotate the questions between the two of you. Both of you will have an opportunity to answer every single question. If a question comes from the audience that's addressed to somebody in particular, I'll let that person obviously answer it first, but the other person can also make a comment or provide some sort of answer as well. People can participate by calling 929-436-2866. I'll give that number again, 929-436-2866. But more than likely, you're probably following on Zoom if you're looking at this meeting remotely. And if you are, if you enter a question into the chat, our able town manager, Eric Dyer, is monitoring that. He'll tap me on the shoulder or yell, "Hey, Bruce," or something of that nature, or pass me a note to ask a particular question. I do ask that residents identify themselves. It is not mandatory that you do, but I think it's a polite thing to do. Obviously, we want to take questions from Readfield residents. And so if you're not a Readfield resident, but perhaps a landowner in Readfield will allow that, but we're not going to go beyond there. So you won't be getting any questions from Washington, D.C. or places like that. Our ground rules are very simple. We've had these standards of conduct for both the audience and members of every board that sits up here. But basically, it's very simple for questioners and candidates. We'll be neighborly and courteous. As I mentioned, this will be recorded, so it will be available later on YouTube. So let's start by meeting the candidates that are going to be running. And I'm going to go with Catherine Woodson, who is the incumbent. And I would say just right up front that we have two candidates running for 2 open seats. So this, perhaps the questioning will be a little bit different. It's not like you're running against each other. But, and we'll go from there. Okay, Catherine, please.
Well, I don't think I'm going to use the full 2 to 3 minutes on each question.
Okay, but go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Yep. So I'm Catherine Mills Woodson. I live in Kents Hill on Main Street. I have been, I did 7 years on the budget committee, I believe, and I'm now completing 15 years on the select board. I wasn't thinking of running again, but it worked out that I am here. I think I'm doing a good job. I think the current board is doing a good job. There's a diversity of people and of viewpoints and of expertise that they bring to the board from their own personal experiences and their different work and life experiences, which I think is really valuable for the public because we're trying to be representative of the community at large. I had the opportunity this past winter to serve on the Kennebec County Budget Committee, and that kind of reinvigorated my desire to want to continue in office, because to stay on that committee, you have to be an elected official. And so I said, well, if I want to keep doing that, I have to keep doing this. And I was worried about depriving some other person who might be interested of having the opportunity to serve as a member of the select board. But as it turned out, we didn't have an abundance of people wanting to do it this year. So here I am. And I'm looking forward to serving again. I'm not interested in being chair in the future. I think there are other very capable people on the board who will fill that role very well, and I'm happy to just be a member at large and contribute what I can.
Thank you, Catherine. Our second person here is Rebecca Lambert. She's no stranger to elective office because she currently serves on the RSU school board. So Rebecca, your opening statement, please.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Rebecca Lambert, and my husband and I moved to Readfield in 2018. Came from Winthrop. I have about 25 years of experience in the municipal realm. I have served for the past 6 years on the school board, and the last 2 I've been vice chair, and I am just thinking that maybe municipal, the select board might align better with my professional experience. I also heard Catherine was not running. I was afraid there wasn't going to be anyone that would run, so I figured I'd throw my hat in the ring. I don't come to the position with any goals in mind. I just am a concerned member of the community, and I enjoy giving back, and I'm happy to be a part of the select board if I'm elected.
Thank you very much. So you really established that you're going to use the 2 to 3 minute limit quite well, both of you, and I appreciate that. I'll also ask Bill, who is our producer out back, to just simply let me know at the door if there were any sound issues, but I think there were probably none. So I'll start off with 1 or 2 questions, and then we'll go to the audience and online, but just to kind of get the pace working. So I'm going to just start with, as a candidate to lead this important town function, okay, serving on the select board, that is the elected office in this town. How are we doing on sound? We got a little problem. Okay, carry on. What's the one thing in this election you would like to communicate to voters now to encourage them to participate in the election? And I think in particular, we have an election where there isn't competition, but it's an indication of telling people how, let's be involved. Let's do that. So how would you encourage people? And I'll start with you, Rebecca.
Well, I guess I encourage people all the time to participate because I'm kind of a nerd that way, and I think that everyone should participate. Local government is where your voice is heard, and just education, just talking to people. That's how I get the word out to participate.
Great. Catherine?
I agree with what you said, Rebecca. Local government is the one place, at least in Maine, where you can participate and you don't have a letter that dictates what you're bringing to the table. Obviously, you have your own personal goals and morals and structures, family values, personal values that guide you in what you're doing, but we're not identified with a letter, and I think that's a really important piece of town government. It keeps it much more transparent. There aren't these hidden agendas going on. There's no outward agenda going on. It's just we're here to do the job, which is to try and spend the money wisely in the way that the voters instructed us to do at town meeting, which is really the basic goal of the select board. And then to set direction for the town by what we choose to put onto the town warrant. And the best way for that to have a personal touch is for people to get involved. And we have probably more than 100 people in this town who participate in various committees. And that gives all of those people a voice. And so they get to help set the direction that the town is going in. And then the voters get to do that by affirming or not at town meeting. And so it's really important to come in because that's how you create a bigger community.
Great. So in alternating questions back and forth, it means we're always going to have somebody answering twice. So you can say pass if you need a breather. But I think your segue about talking about spending the town's money wisely brings me to the next question, which is what are your thoughts on the town's current budget and what would be kind of your ideas about meeting the needs of Readfield through future budgets? So Catherine, you'll start on that.
Well, I think this is a really responsible budget, as all of them have been since I've lived in town for like 46 years, not just ones that I've been involved in. I think our town has a strong history of trying to do the right thing and to not be more than it needs to be. And there have been times when I think we've had projects come up and we've been instructed that we reached too far and those things get voted down. And then we just take that and say, okay, here we are, let's not do that, and we move on. This year, the select board set as their goal to finish projects that were ongoing and to not heap new things onto the town manager or to town employees through the town manager. We're finishing the ball field project, getting the funds raised and the approvals needed. The same thing with the Church Road sidewalk parking project. Unfortunately, the budget is higher than we wanted it to be, but costs have gone up. And costs went up for individuals, costs go up for businesses, costs have gone up for government. There's no way of escaping that. So we've tried to be as reasonable as possible. We held employee wages to the cost of living increase. It was the federal standard, I think, or a little bit less. We're trying to retain good people and not have a lot of turnover, but at the same time, we want to reward those employees so that they'll stay with us. So I think it's a fair budget and that we've been wise. I'm very frustrated with, and this will finish me off, I'm very frustrated with our sand and salt shed project, which we thought might be $250,000, and then Eric upped it to maybe it would be $500,000. And then we got an estimate and it was more than double that. And now we're like, well, we're not going to do this and we're not going to put this forth to the voters because we feel that would be irresponsible. And the other day I drove into Livermore Falls and I'm like, they have a mountain of sand and salt that is uncovered and it's just sitting there. And their roads get sanded and salted all winter long, and maybe that's what we need. Maybe we just need a big pile. So, open to suggestions from the greater public on that one. That'll be a big expense for Readfield.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. Rebecca?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. I'm happy to.
Sorry, I rambled.
What are your thoughts on the town's current budget, and what would be your ideas about best meeting the needs of Readfield residents through future budgets?
Yes, okay. Well, I would definitely echo what Catherine said. I also served on the budget committee for some time, and there's some really great members. Wow.
He's got you on now.
There's some great members on the budget committee. I think Eric has always done a really good job presenting that to the budget, presenting the budget numbers to the committee. I lost my train of thought. I apologize. Question was budget.
How will it affect the
How it
community
affect the community,
responsibly?
yes. And with what Catherine said, as far as the goal that the select board has, I think is a fantastic goal to finish up the projects, because loose ends always need to be tied up. And I really have nothing else to say, I'm sorry.
That's quite fine. We'll start using some questions. So are there any questions from the audience?
Thank you.
Last year, at this candidate's night, Sean Roderick was running for re-election as the school board president, unopposed, as you are. And I showed him this graph that had just been published at the time, and I asked him, why we should feel confident as parents when the exact same people who presided over a catastrophic decline in learning for our kids are going to be making the same decisions for the next 3 years.
Can I make an informational point?
Sure.
Okay, and it's as a courtesy. These are candidates for select board, not school board.
No, I understand, but
And-
Rebecca has been a school board member for 6 years. And so that's
Certainly
part
has.
of her experience.
Yes.
And
So
I-
ask your
I'm-
question.
Well, my name is, by the way, my name is Chris Alvarado. I've been a
Yeah.
resident here for 15 years. My 2 oldest graduated from the high school.
Mm-hmm.
My youngest is currently a student at the high school. And my question really was, in light of how catastrophic your policies have been over the last 4 or 5 years, why should we feel confident that the same people making those decisions are going to be making decisions going forward?
So that's addressed to you, Rebecca, I think, first, and so I'll give you an opportunity to answer that, or make a comment on it, or decline it, and then we'll go to Catherine.
Well, my only comment on that is I believe that we have differing opinions on the policies that we made, and I'll just leave it at that.
Catherine?
Actually, if I could ask a different question for Catherine, since she's involved in the budget and she wasn't a school board member.
That's fine.
I wanted to
Sure.
ask you what your reaction was to the audit that was recently concluded by a Democratic auditor of the state government showing about a $2.1 billion waste. Why is that a good thing, and why should somebody who was part of that apparatus have confidence of citizens in the community that we're not going to continue in that same manner?
I'm not sure I understand your question. I'm aware of the audit and that there are unaccounted funds. And what are you asking me?
Well, I mean, you're part of the state apparatus that led to a $2.1 billion shortfall in terms of fraud. How do you approach that, and how can you assure us it's not going to happen in the future?
I have nothing to do with anything on the state level. No one on the select board in Readfield has anything to do with the state level, anything. And no one on the county has any influence either.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Are there other members of the public that have questions? Okay.
Anyone
Do we have anything
online?
From the chat.
No, we're quiet on.
We're quiet on the chat,
A few
so,
more people watching now, but
Good.
It's quiet.
so I guess I would say, people online, it's very easy to type in a question to that chat, and you'll get away from my boring, repetitive, kind of formulaic questions, and that's always a good thing. We'll go to another question just in this particular list. What do you see as and maybe this was kind of answered or alluded to, but what do you see as the most pressing capital project yet to be undertaken in the town of Readfield? And I'm going to go to Rebecca first.
Okay.
So,
Well, I think there's a few that have yet to be tied up. There's the Church Road sidewalk project. I know we've talked about a new fire truck. The salt sand shed has been talked about for a really long time.
and I guess I would just kind of add a follow-up to clarify what I was asking, to say, do you see any other pressing, unaddressed need for capital use?
If I would talk personally, I would really love to see the beach be used as a community resource. I think if we could find some way to build that area up and make it more usable by the community, I think that would be a gem for Readfield.
So there might be some capital investment there, not to put words in your mouth. Catherine, please.
Rebecca must have been looking at our capital improvement plan because she served for so many years on the budget committee and did a fantastic job, I might add. Yes, that's definitely the next one coming up. The sand salt shed is really unaddressed. It's known, but it's unaddressed, and I'm not sure how it will be addressed. We have to continue looking at I don't want to use the word climate. We have a lot of different weather events, whether it's an accumulation of snow and ice that you then have this quick thawing and you have these torrential runoff problems where we've had to work on the ditches and the culverts on people's driveways, with driveways washing out, and how to predict for that. We've had some torrential rainstorms. For whatever reason, we still have to find a way to protect the millions of dollars we've invested in our roads. And we've been looking at that all along, and Eric keeps coming up with more information to give to the road committee, who gives to the select board and the budget committee, and that's sort of an ongoing but unaddressed issue. And the beach is definitely there, and we've actually had a request from at least one or more residents, Sean, maybe you know, about accessibility. There's a limit, I think, to just how accessible we can make the beach, but the idea is to put in some sort of a path, maybe similar to some of the trails that we have in town, where it would be a safer walking path to go from the parking area down to the water's edge, as well as something that would be appropriate for someone to be pushed in a wheelchair. I'm not sure we could ever get to the point of a self-propelled wheelchair. I'm just not sure how that will work, but the idea would be to have an accessibility study done and then to make it more user-friendly so that people have a better canopy where you could have bigger events, whether it was hot and you want to keep the sun off, to utilize it more in the winter for ice skating or snow parties. I know people did stuff down there this year with the rec board, so I think that's spot on, and people love it.
Great. Good.
Can I ask a question?
Please do. Please approach the,
I don't, unless you're going to follow up to what you were.
no, please, go ahead.
Good evening, Sean Keegan, Readfield resident. I just wondered, as we have such a big audience here tonight, and as many of you know, a lot of our other meetings seem to have a similar size audience. And we definitely have seen changes where people are watching on YouTube a lot more, and we're kind of hearing about that. I'm just wondering what you may have heard about engagement with different community members, or have ideas on how we can maybe interact more with the community through different means.
Great question. Rebecca?
That is a good question. I have noticed the increase in online communications, and I know I have appreciated that. I think our lives are so busy nowadays that being able to just get like the newsletter that comes out, the messenger, that's been really good. Having the select board meetings available electronically so you can just log in and listen. I know there's been times that I've just been listening and you've asked me if I have a question. No, I'm just being nosy. But yeah, I think using the tools that we have available to us now, currently, is a good way to engage people, and understanding that everybody has busy lives.
Thank you.
Yes, to all of that. I think we could probably do something at Heritage Days if we wanted to, as a board, you know, sort of be more present or sponsor an activity. I'm not doing a dunk tank.
That's kind of a line in the sand candidate thing. isn't it?
Exactly, no, not doing that. You know, so I think some of that sort of community involvement, but we don't have a lot of that kind of large community event in Readfield. You know, there are places who have a fair and 15,000 people come to your town for it. That's a whole different experience than what we have here in Readfield. But I definitely think we could possibly, especially during election times, try to get more people who are voting in person or just through absentee to say, please sign up for the notifications. You know, there are different levels. I've talked to some summer residents when we have their meetings in the summer. And they're like, well, I don't want to be notified of every event that's happening because I don't live here most of the year. And I'm like, well, you could sign up, I think, for just the newsletter. And so if we can maybe advertise that more, put a little piece of paper in, you know, with a note, sign up for this, you know, if you find you don't like it, you can unsubscribe. But I really think that's where most people are getting their information, or through their children at school. But I'm not sure that we want to push things for the town.
There's already too much in those newsletters.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you
it
both.
needs to be equitable, you know.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask another question, check with the chat, and go back to the audience. I'm also going to, this is kind of the fair warning thing, I'm also going to give you an opportunity to ask each other a question or simply share a story or something about serving perhaps on select board and what that means to you, and maybe engaging with the other person a little bit conversationally. So that in a few minutes. So the next question is, what technologies do you believe should be pursued to stay current and offer value or added value to residents? And that goes to you first, Catherine.
I admit I was not paying attention. Can you repeat it, please?
Yeah, sure.
We were both somewhere
Let the
else for a
record
moment.
show that the candidate drifted. What technologies do you believe should be pursued? And you kind of alluded to this a little bit.
Okay.
So this is almost like a follow-up. What technologies do you believe should be pursued to stay current and offer the most value to residents?
Well, this is an unfair question and answer because I'm involved in all of this and you're not. But you're involved in this professionally at work, I believe, through Maine Municipal. So you can maybe answer from that angle. But we've been doing technology upgrades here at the town office, and all of our governmental software was just upgraded to a cloud-based system, which is the Trio system. We just put something else up into the cloud, didn't we, Eric? Now, whoosh, it's going away.
Who said we should do this at 7 o'clock at night?
Yeah, that was me. We changed our email so that it's much more user-friendly for everybody, and using the town newsletter. I think we had the GIS maps all uploaded, and that's really phenomenal for residents as well as people doing research, and for realtors, and for prospective people buying property in town. So I think all of those upgrades that we can keep doing, giving the best technology we can to our workers so that they can interact expeditiously with their clients, which is the townspeople who come in for services, is really important. And that's been a priority for Eric and his staff, and I think they're doing a really good job with the upgrades we've made.
Rebecca?
Well, those sound like all great technology upgrades, and if I could just add one to that I would really like to see, I don't know if Readfield is doing this now or not, but having all of our cemeteries online so that they can be searchable, so people can find grave sites. I spent some time on the Maine State Cemetery Preservation Commission, and I've heard of a lot of interns that have been used to do that kind of work for towns, but that would be something I think that would be really helpful and would help preserve those records into the future.
Great.
That's something that we have looked into, but it's kind of fallen to the sexton, and then you have the sexton change.
Right.
And someone else comes in, and then they kind of start over. And I know at some point we had looked into like buying a program, and then the programs are different, and then someone was going to just create it with spreadsheets. And I think we need someone to drive that. So if that's, that would be a great thing when you're on the board to have as a goal for the select board, and you might champion it to try and keep it moving. Mm-hmm. That would be awesome, because that's been on the radar, but like really low.
It usually is. The clientele aren't very loud.
No, but yes, but their descendants can be louder.
That is true.
Do we have anybody online?
No, it's still a blank screen, I think people are listening intently.
Okay. And you'll type into the chat, don't hesitate to ask your questions or something like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, great. But they can hear me anyhow. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to ask another question to our candidates? And we're not going to go the full hour and 15 minutes, probably.
I was hoping you wouldn't.
Yeah, but we are going to get through kind of the gist of these questions. And as I said, fair warning, and actually you did start talking conversationally a little bit. Rebecca, do you have a question or a comment that you would like to make to Catherine?
I'm glad you're going to be on the board again. I was really sad that you were getting off the board. I think you're going to be a great person to learn from. So I appreciate that you decided to run again.
Thank you very
You're
much. And that's, that's what I hope to offer to the town, is that sort of piece of history, that institutional knowledge, but maybe in a little bit more retracted sense, letting other people have the center stage. Although, not being the chair, you can participate more than being the chair, because the chair is not supposed to like make motions and second motions. So maybe I'll be more talkative and bother somebody, but probably not.
I have to say, one thing that I have appreciated is that you always make it very clear for the public and what the select board is doing. And I think that's very important, that it's clear for the members who are listening.
Yes, thank you. I've been accused of explaining things that I shouldn't, can we keep this meeting moving along a little bit more? And I'm like, but we all understand the history and we know where we're coming from. And I think explaining it to anyone who might be listening, especially if you can't always assume that it's the same people who have knowledge already. So if you have a newbie who's listening, they might like to understand where this came from and why you're doing something the way you're doing it, or not doing something. Why can't I affect the state budget? Well, because that's not in our purview, and people need to be told that. So let's see, something for you. Do you see this as a challenge coming from being a school board member to being a town select board member? Or do you see it as more like just a lateral move, moving from one part of town government to another?
For me, it's more of a lateral move. The school board was really challenging because my background is not in education, so I really had no frame of reference of where to come from with the whole educational field. So and I work for the Maine Municipal Association, so municipal management is kind of my thing. So I feel like this is kind of, I think I'll be able to slide right in, but I don't want to say that I'll be able to slide right in because I don't want to jinx myself.
Well, I'll tell you, speaking for myself and my perception of the rest of the select board, we were all very excited when you were considering running for office because of your work experience, because we see you as being a good resource and can help with explaining things to us or letting us know of things maybe that are happening out in the bigger world away from Readfield that may affect us. So, cool.
Great.
Really looking forward to that.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you for doing this. Talking with one another is kind of an example of what happens on the select board itself in deliberation and so forth. So that's useful. So we talked a little bit about capital improvements. And so my next question is, do you see any areas where operational improvement is necessary, and how would you plan on perhaps addressing or facilitating operational changes? And I've lost my place as to who should go first here. Who would that be? Good, Catherine, go.
I'll go first, and
Oh, because we go back to back. Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that question because I don't participate really on that level with Eric or the budget committee. I think a budget committee member could answer that a lot better, or Eric. Everything that I know about are things that have been addressed to us, and we've said, sure, fine. Eric gets really high reviews from the select board, which we do a 360-degree evaluation, taking comments from vendors, from community members, from partners who work with him, and from boards and committee members. And everybody is always very impressed that the operation of Readfield is high. So I don't know.
Okay, great. Do you have anything to add to that question? Or thoughts?
Not really. I I haven't been a member of the select board, so I would need to have some time to get my feet wet before I would be able to answer that.
And Catherine's right about kind of the difference in terms of operational and capital and so on and so forth. There are people that are closer to that, but obviously a select board member sees things, and so that's an opportunity to perhaps address something from time to time. So I'll just actually, and I'm going to give this again to you first, Catherine. Are there any ordinances that are needed or in need of replacement? Or revision, major revision? I
I'm
would say.
sure there are.
Yeah, but
we-
nothing is coming forward as, we've really got to do something about that.
No, there's nothing currently that is on the, oh my goodness, we haven't taken care of this list. 2 years ago, I believe, Eric and I sat down and we compiled a list of all of the ordinances, and we found a couple that weren't in the list, that were in sort of other places, brought them all together, made a chart of when they were created, when they were last revised, and kind of when we thought they should be revised again. And, you know, we had some that were 13, 15 years since they'd been looked at. And an example of that was like a mass gathering ordinance that was created in the 90s after the Fish concert took place over in Oxford at the Speedway. And people all over Maine got excited, like, we don't want this to happen to our town. And so let's do something. And so, you know, it hadn't been looked at in forever. And I think we passed that along to the planning board to put in the land use ordinance as a section, as opposed to having a standalone thing. And so that list is still there, and there are things that haven't been reviewed, probably in the 5 to 10 year range, that we should probably look at. The planning board is really on top of most of these things because they're always trying to update things to be current with the changes that take place at the state level. Because we can't be competing. We have to be in line.
Okay, thank you. And so I'll give the same question to Rebecca, but Rebecca, I guess in a little bit of a different way perhaps, just are there any laws that you think should be enacted in Readfield? An ordinance is essentially a law, and so I won't get into what different ordinances are, but do you see something that's lacking in control or that ought to be addressed, or you think that's not quite up to date?
Well, I know I looked at the list of ordinances once, but I don't remember what any of them are, so I couldn't even tell you what we have for ordinances in Readfield. But I would think that we would take a look at those occasionally anyway, just to make sure that they're up to date. And I know at the legislature, I've been hearing a lot about different, the municipalities can just pass an ordinance to do this and that, so I'm sure there'll be more that are coming down that hopefully I can, if we need to, I can bring it to everyone's attention.
Great. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Do we have any from online?
No, I didn't give a prompt, and,
Okay, well,
good.
the verbal prompt was probably no. So I'm a citizen too, so I get to ask my question. And so the
And
questions.
you can go first.
Yes. And actually, I would like Rebecca to go first, because it's her turn. So the questions I've been asking were kind of pre-written by the town to just kind of prime the pump and so forth. So I guess my question is, we see a lot of news happening on the housing front, affordable housing, and I'm just wondering what you might think the town's role would be, or is there a role for the town to encourage more affordable housing in Readfield, Maine? And that gets to kind of the character of the town and so on and so forth, I understand. But I think it's a question that every town is grappling with. And I will say up front that there's a lot of moving parts because the state legislature is very heavily into looking at this. So you might be saying something that you're encouraging our state legislative legislators to look into as well. This is your chance. Go ahead.
I really don't have enough knowledge on the housing topic. It's not my wheelhouse. But I definitely think that Readfield has zones and can use that zoning to their advantage to have it be the character that they want it to be. So I don't have an answer as far as what they are doing now that maybe could be changed or that needs to be looked at. But maybe in the future, I may have more of an opinion on that.
I think the state will weigh in too on some of those zoning issues. That's kind of
Absolutely,
what we're
there's
doing.
a lot in play
That's kind of
right
what's
now.
coming down the pike. Catherine?
It's a tough one. When we did the comprehensive plan revision over the last several years, that was one of the sticking points. We were talking about affordable housing, and that unfortunately has a stigma evidently in the greater world, that affordable housing means like we're going to subsidize it and you're going to have people move here who don't have any money and they're going to be getting all their money from the government to pay for their housing. And I think what we were talking about was housing that would be affordable for a family to come and it be reasonable for a family to be able to come and live in Readfield and have a job somewhere and not be priced out of the town. So that's what we meant by affordable. I think our ordinance allows that and our comprehensive plan supports that, especially having more kind of centralized housing. But people don't seem to want that. When people are buying land and building houses, they want to have their 2 or 3 or 4 acres off, away from others, and we can't control where people purchase. I know I've seen several different roads in Winthrop that have what I think are amazing little houses. They're little, one set of them is on 135 going between 17 and 202. And they're just ranch-style houses with 2 garages in the center and small houses on the side. They have a nice little yard, they have a driveway, they have privacy, and they're not, $500,000 each. I think if we could promote more things like that to be built, maybe someone buys it or builds it and lives in half and rents the other half out. But something to try and let people be able to come and live here with their children and have all the amenities we have, the schools, the beach, the trails, the new park, but not have to pay $500,000 to get here. So, but we can't control that. I don't know how we encourage that.
I was just going to ask that. How do
Yeah.
you encourage that?
You can't really, except that I think when people would come here to the code officer and the planning board to ask to build things that, hopefully they are inviting or they're open and receptive to that and not saying, oh no, this is a 2-family house, we can't have those in Readfield. So, and I believe that's all allowed in our current structure, so.
Great, thank you. So we'll go back to these questions and just kind of finish up. We have 2 more, and then we'll do a closing. I'll also just do another audience round, so we'll be out of here by 8 o'clock, probably a little bit earlier. One of the things the select board does is, and Catherine, you'll correct me if I'm not correct on this, is it holds a retreat somewhere near the beginning of its term, the current board each year. And so that's also an opportunity to kind of bring a fresh idea or to say, I really want to champion this or that item. And so do you, Rebecca, envision yourself bringing an idea? Do you have a burning idea that you want to bring to that retreat? Or do you have something that you would like to sort of champion throughout the year? And it could be something very simple too. I remember Dennis Price, who is one of the previous select board chairs, saying he wanted to get community members to lead the Pledge of Allegiance. It was his thing. And so it could be something small or it could be something grand. Have you given that any thought even?
Well, I think I stated earlier that I would like to see Readfield digitize their cemetery records, and Catherine pointed out that that could be something that I champion, so maybe I will look into doing that.
I would love that.
Great job of entrapment here. But yeah, I mean, that's good. Catherine?
Oh, I had a goal for this year to try and help the road committee to,
The past year or the coming year?
this past year, to like move the little speed machine thing around, and I never ended up doing anything with that. So that's probably a good goal. I could try again, but I really like you bringing it up and Rebecca talking about it, going back to the ordinance review and just hitting that list again and seeing what needs to be looked at. And by review, we mean maybe the select board reads it and says, oh, that's interesting, I didn't know we had one of those. Or, wow, this seems kind of antiquated, or why do we have this? It could be any of those ranges. Or it can be as simple as saying, Eric, who's in charge of this? Is this really like the planning board, or is this something you do because it's administrative? Is it really more to do with trails, or, and then have that group of people look at it and see if it needs revision or reviewing. But then we could get that list updated. And I like those sort of administrative things getting taken care of. I think that instills some confidence in the public when they go to look at something and they see it was written in 2005. It's never been revised, and they're like, oh my, what's Readfield doing? But when you can see it was looked at in the last 3 or 4 years, you're like, hey, they're on top of things, so.
Great. So I have one final question, but before I get there, are there any other questions from the audience?
Not at this time.
Okay, great. So we'll ask this question and then we'll go ahead with some closing comments. Thinking of the town 10 years from now, what actions do you think might you want to sponsor now or be a
I'll be
part of now
76.
that would make those things possible? And that's kind of, it ties in with what we were talking about, but I guess what I'm saying is, what's the longer horizon thing that would relate perhaps more to capital planning and of a project nature? And maybe there's nothing, but it's a good opportunity to say, I think on the horizon we need to be looking at X, Y, Z. So Catherine, you'll go first on this.
I think we need to be cognizant of not letting taxes get too out of hand. And I'm not sure how we do that differently than we're doing currently. I just said to Rebecca, okay, I'm going to be 76 in 10 years, so what am I going to want then? So we need a nursing home here in Readfield.
Can we have
But I think maybe a goal would be to keep the age-friendly committee going and be looking more seriously at those aging issues, because Readfield is an aging population. People either come to raise their families and they're here while their kids are in school, and then they leave because they're going on to another adventure and part of life, or people come here and they stay permanently. And those people who stay after their kids leave are now getting a lot older. And we have a great committee that handles those things, but I bet those are going to be the issues that are going to affect us more in town. I don't know how the town can help with that other than by just acknowledging it and holding spaces for people to gather and to get together and to use each other as resources, which is kind of what we do now.
Rebecca?
Well, 10 years from now, hopefully we have something going on with the beach. No, but seriously, that would be nice.
Yeah.
But
I was laughing, so I hope it doesn't take 10 years.
you never know. The wheels of government turn slowly, and that's okay. But no, Readfield is just a great place to live, and I would like to I think it's well-run. I think we have good people living here and running our town, and I just would like to see it continue to thrive.
Great. Okay, any other questions? Last chance. You have one?
Going
Um,
once, going twice.
When is Election Day?
June 10th.
Election Day is June 10th, yes, and it's called Town Meeting Day as well, although we don't have a traditional floor meeting. So at Kents Hill School is where we vote, and we hope that everybody who's listening and watches this eventually will get out to vote on June 10th. There are 2 open positions on the select board, and both of these candidates are running. It's an uncontested race, but it's important to participate. Your closing comment, please, Rebecca.
Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to run for select board, and if you'll have me, I would be happy to serve the town of Readfield.
Succinct.
Yes, to the
Catherine.
point.
I'm going to be a little bit long-winded. So part of the reason, as I stated in my opening statement, was, for wanting to run again was to continue working on the Kennebec County Budget Committee. It's been eye-opening and very informative and educational for me. Meeting other people from around the county at large who are on the committee with me was really interesting to hear perspectives from other towns. One town manager said that their goal with their budget was a 0% tax increase, and that's what they did. And they just cut things, and they just did it. And I was shocked that it could be done. But everybody brings something different to the table. And the biggest problem we're having right now with county government is that the state isn't funding the jails, the county level jails, to the level that they said they would. And they are continuing to pass more mandated services, and they're not funding them. And this amounts to something in the neighborhood of $2 million annually for the Kennebec County in those 2 areas where they're not funding enough and giving mandated health insurance, medical coverage, medical care, and rehabilitative drug treatments. And if the state would pay what they should be for these things that they're mandating, then the Kennebec County tax would be smaller, because right now it's just being passed on to the property tax. And this is happening across the state. This is not unique to Kennebec County. But it's placing an unfair burden on the taxpayers to pay for something that really should be spread out across the state. And so I would really encourage people to read my article for this month and for next month about county government, and to try and get a little bit more involved with your state rep and senator to ask for some of these more broad-based things to be covered, because it directly affects us. And it's something that this select board has no control over. We have no control over the school budget, but we have to administer it, the collecting of the money for it, and we have no control over the county budget, but we have to collect that money and pay for it. And so that makes it really hard to sit on this board, because you have to take the heat for those costs going up when you have no control over them. So I'm just petitioning people to read up a little bit more about what's involved in the county government, and to ask your state legislators to please appropriate money a little more wisely.
So,
Can I just
Please do.
echo what you said and encourage people to contact their legislators, because it really makes a difference, and they listen to people that call them, and it really is helpful, especially on hot topic issues like that.
You know, if they get 4 or 5 emails, it's like nothing. They get 20, they're paying attention. They have 30, that's like unheard of, and they start really listening.
Absolutely.
And so I didn't realize that it can actually make a difference, so.
So I want to thank you for answering the questions tonight, for going ahead and making opening and closing statements. It's an honor to serve in local government, I think, but it's also government that's closest to the people, so I think that's very important. And I guess my message to the audience, whether you watch this later or you happen to be hearing it now, is this is the level of government that you will meet in the post office, in the Connors store, out on the streets, if you will, or at the park, or whatever. So don't hesitate to ask them a question or share a thought or two, or even that elusive pat on the back, you're doing a good job. So come to a meeting, yes.
Just be kind.
Be kind. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce,
Thank you.
appreciate it.